Hello, everyone. It's Friday morning, and the headline today is a significant tornado and damaging wind threat exists for a chunk of North Dakota, and by extension, maybe parts of South Dakota and Minnesota as well. As you see the severe weather outlook for today at a level 3 in that area, and that outlook covers all types of severe weather, but in particular, tornado and damaging wind threats seem to be high on the list. Take a look at the HRRR simulated radar. This is what a model thinks the radar will look like. It could be true. It's probably going to be pretty close. And look at these supercells developing in North Dakota, extending over into Minnesota. This is for the next 18 hours. So you can kind of see how this develops late in the day out over Montana and quickly moves across North Dakota. And if you see these little areas of gray circles that look like snail trails behind these storms, like right there, that just means that there is rotating updraft intensity with a lot of these storms. Or in other words, it's a supercell thunderstorm, one that's capable of producing all modes of severe weather. When they're isolated like this, they probably have a slightly better chance of producing a tornado. Let's take a look at the morning satellite view here as the sun rises on what will be the first day of astronomical summer. Not full day, but it changes today. And we're looking at a typical summer pattern where thunderstorms roll east-southeast, basically like this, being driven by jet stream winds that come ashore here and go over the top of a ridge. And that is what's going to be happening over the next several days. Let's dive in and take a look at today. This is what the bulk shear looks like at 7 p.m. tonight. So what does that mean? That means if you see these areas, basically anything that starts to be shaded blue or kind of that purple color, it just means that the winds from the surface to about roughly 500 millibars is adequate enough to support supercell storms. It doesn't necessarily address tornadic wind motion that's at the lower levels of the atmosphere, but it does suggest that supercells are possible. And this is the instability, something we call CAPE, and this is going to be maximized. Now, it looks like there's not much up here, but that is a purposeful sort of thing because this zone right here, right along the southern end of the strongest jet stream winds are where those thunderstorms, as you saw, were breaking out. And you can also have maximum instability but not have anything happen because maybe the winds are not favorable, although I do think a few supercells will probably develop in that area today. So we'll take a look at the bigger picture here for Friday. We do have a little bit of a 1 out of 5 chance there through, Colorado Springs, eastern Colorado down to New Mexico, and a pretty broad area that's expecting at least a possibility of some severe weather today. And of course, we already highlighted this area. We'll take a closer look at that. That's a level 3 out of 5 there, running from, right along from Bismarck into that's I-90, basically, Fargo, central and northern Minnesota. Level 2 does get down to Minneapolis. Again, you saw on the radar, the thunderstorms are forecast to kind of initiate their move this way, and the radar's interpretation is to keep them mostly up there, and I think that's probably pretty accurate. Now, this is significant. The tornado outlook for today is a 10% chance of a tornado within 25 miles. If this were April or May, I actually posted quite a few of those on this what turned out to be super severe year. But in June, and actually getting into late June, I expect this to be up here in the northern part of the U.S. if it's going to be anywhere. But a 10% risk is a fairly hardy risk for tornadoes in that same area we've been talking about. Nadocast, run from them last night's data, the 0Z data, does put that same emphasis area. It goes as high as 3% on there. That gets updated later in the morning. And there might be, a little bit of enhancement of that, maybe to 5 or even 10% later today. So the significant tornado probability, this is an EF2 or greater, 10% chance. Right along, again, I-94, I called it 90 before, that's 94. That runs from Bismarck to Fargo and areas north of there, almost getting to Grand Forks. And of course, as you know, it just depends greatly on exactly where those thunderstorms will pop up. And then we have a high wind risk here, same significant threat for damaging winds in almost that same area. And of course, large hail goes without question too, but those are two probably the most widespread possibilities of damage of any substance and things that would make the news. Take a look at SIP's outlook for today. They have thunderstorms popping up in Florida. They kind of reflect that Colorado activity, but the highest percentages are about what you would expect. CSU's model supports the tornado scenario, definitely. That's a 15% in yellow right there in that same area with 5% surrounding it. So pretty high probabilities up there, a little bit higher than SPCs. And the hail probability is pretty high also in North Dakota. And there's that significant wind possibility right there. You see that that black area? You can't quite see it. There's no way to zoom in on that particular image, but that's a hatched area. So that's goes along with that significant wind threat map I just had up. So today, busy day in the Dakotas and Minnesota for sure. Then we move to Saturday. This whole thing shifts east and affects the UP and the northern part of the lower peninsula of Michigan and over into New York, including Buffalo and Syracuse. Those areas under a 2 out of 5 risk for severe weather on Saturday, beginning the weekend. There's a tornado risk in that same general area, but it's a 2% risk. And then again, kind of a reinvention of thunderstorms up in North Dakota with a slight tornado risk there. If we look at CSU's tornado probability, it emphasizes Ontario more than anywhere else for tornadoes, with the hail and the high wind threat running from North Dakota due east to the northern tip of upstate New York, but does include the UP, northern Michigan mostly, maybe parts of Wisconsin, and certainly a good chunk of Minnesota as well. For Sunday, the severe weather threat, you can tell by its way it's shaped. There's a frontal system coming in here, so that's organizing thunderstorms from Minnesota to Nebraska on Sunday. And if we look at Colorado State's model here, yeah, it supports this kind of downward trend for supercell possibilities. That right there is the wind, and this is the hail probabilities with a tornado threat in the Arrowhead region of Minnesota on Sunday. Monday, and this is the day period 4 through 8 as far as the Storm Prediction Center is concerned. They have not pulled the trigger on anything. The severe weather probabilities out of CSU lay down through the Corn Belt and up into the Great Lakes states on Monday. Same kind of general pattern on Tuesday, except it shifts east a little bit. And this part of the country is used to thunderstorms forming out here and then sliding east-southeast. So this is a very common occurrence for folks who live up there. It does kind of interestingly go down to the Carolinas on Wednesday, and then on Thursday kind of hangs out there as well. Now, remember, and if you've been watching the weather, you know there's a big old hot dome of air forming here, so it'll be hard for organized thunderstorms to develop. And I'll show you the EPS weeklies here as the last graphs. Shows you where that high will be. So on June 20th through the 26th, that's for basically what I just reviewed, because it accumulates supercell probabilities through that 7-day period. Yeah, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and maybe over into parts of New York State and the Northeast. That's for the next 7 days. For the 7 days after that, June 27th through the July 3rd, sinks south a little bit. Supercell production might be occurring in Kansas, parts of Missouri, over into Illinois. It looks like there's a frontal system kind of stabilizing the air up here a little bit, so it shifts south quite a bit. And on the 4th of July, could be some Mother Nature fireworks in the central U.S. from Nebraska over to Chicago during that weekly period. And the last thing we'll look at here, and this is the EPS weekly. So this just takes the 500 millibar flow for this period, June 23rd and 29th, takes the mean, and it shows a high pressure ridge over the Carolinas. This color means this is highly above normal for this to be here at this time of year. So this is just hot weather. This is 90 and 100 degree weather. It pretty much shuts down organized severe weather production. Now this part of the jet stream does not. So that's why that northern plains activity is still very prevalent, because we have enough unstable air on this side of the high and enough jet stream winds to support supercells. And then on the dew point, same time period, the anomalies. So it's a little moist up in the Northeast and the Great Lakes states, and especially in New Mexico. It's an area that could use some rain, so hopefully we can convert that. This is part one of a monsoon that develops in the southeastern U.S. Moisture comes in from the Gulf under favorable conditions this way, and sometimes comes up from the Pacific later in the summer as well. Thanks for watching today's edition of Severe Thunderstorm Outlooks. This is published every day after the morning Storm Prediction Center update. Also, remember to check that site off on day one, because they update it fairly frequently. If you like this video, please like it. Also, you can subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.